Welcome in, sports family, and happy August. August 1st, 2026. We are officially in the eighth month of the year. Wow, time is literally flying. We're in the last quarter of 2026. Before you know it, it will be the holidays. I am Sonja. Welcome to the Legal Score. Welcome into my normal viewers and those who are return viewers alike. Shout out to Pink Fanfare and Brian B.A. Aren't the producers behind the scenes. Today's show, even though normally on Saturdays I do a lot of shows about crimes and cases that are on right now, I'm going to take a turn because it's been so much NFL news that's happened this week. I'm actually going to make today's segment all about college football. So, first of all, congratulations are in order for Devin White. Let me go ahead and plug that in for you guys. Just signed a 1-year contract with the Detroit Lions. Now, he's been a bit of a journeyman, but I did want to go ahead and start off by welcoming him to the den. And 1 year, you never know what he's going to do with it, but definitely want to, recognize that. Now, listen, this is my college football season preview. I'm your host, and we're going to be spending a full hour diving into gridiron landscape. We're going to be breaking down every single thing you need to know before kickoff, which is literally within seconds, I should say, from stats, system overhauls, and breakdown players, breakout players, I should say, to off-season legal shutdowns and showdowns that have happened during the off-season, transfer portal reshuffling, and how programs across this country and throughout the college football world are adjusting to losing some of the generational talent that we saw going into the NFL draft. So we're going to be heavy on the Southeastern Conference today. That's the SEC. That's where a lot of the teams that I personally follow are housed, or they, as they say, they rest at. Because let's be real, the road to the national championship still runs, despite last season, directly through the SEC. But we're also going to be turning our eyes out west to Boulder. Going to check on Dion and see how those Colorado guys are rolling out there. Take a look at Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes, and we'll examine the growing wave of former NFL players and coaches who have actually gone on to take college sidelines across the nation. So grab your favorite drinks and snacks, and I'm right here. And we're going to go ahead and break down some of this stuff. Now, let's talk about the SEC. There's been a lot of heavy hitters from the SEC. That's right. This is the epicenter of college football. Like always, you guys see it in the draft. A lot of players going from UGA, LSU, and all of the South go to a lot of heavy hitters. In fact, there's some nicknames, I think they call those guys that went to the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dog Eagles that went up there from UGA. And so the conference is stacked from top to bottom. Their recruitment team is on point every single year. Let's not forget about Alabama and the Roll Tide and, Clemson, and just a lot of heavy talent coming out of the South. Now, even though the storylines heading into this season are dramatic, there's a little couple of moments that you just got to keep your eyes open because you never are sure for certain about what you're going to see. So all eyes are actually starting out with the biggest name coming into this last season for him, none other than Arch Manning. This era actually begins. All eyes are in Austin, frankly, across the entire country. They're looking at this quarterback. He actually bid his time behind Quinn Ewers. You guys know Quinn definitely was there for a little bit. Texas Longhorns definitely manifested and shaped him into where he is. But a lot of bit of this is the Manning pedigree. It's going to take a full-time role. We're going to get to see this full-time ownership taking the reins of quarterback behind Steve Sarfinski's offense. So it's going to be a lot to look for. Sarkisian. A lot to look for on that offense. Texas is actually replacing over 3,000 passing yards and key wideout production that went high in the NFL draft. You got to keep your eye open for the sophomore receiver, the wide receiver, that is, Ryan Wingo. Wingo brings a rare blend of size and sub 4.4 speed. And Sarkisian loves to run that type of play, that max project shot, protected plays. And Wingo is poised to be Manning's primary vertical target. Now, how does Texas adopt to losing experienced offensive linemen and the leadership and draft picks to the pros. Well, Sarkeesian has actually retooled via high school blue chippers and targeted portal additions to keep the pocket clean for Art. So it's going to be interesting to look at that. The Georgia Bulldogs, we're going to talk about them next. Kirby Smart, still playing it smart with a defensive reload over in Athens here in Georgia. Kirby doesn't rebuild. He just simply reloads. I mean, like I said, his recruitment is stellar. Even after sending another wave of a lot of defensive players to the NFL, the Bulldog standards are going to remain unchanged. Now, key players to watch: defensive lineman Elijah Griffin. Griffin is set to be the next game disrupting interior presence for Georgia. He commands double teams, which frees up a lot of the linebackers to shoot gaps untouched. Offensive transitions in Georgia, with key offensive playmakers graduating or going into the league. Georgia's offense will lean heavily on the establish the run efficiency while integrating fresh receiving targets in the slot. So, gonna pause there for just a moment because I do need to share this live stream. I totally forgot, guys. I'm so sorry. So let me run a quick commercial and I will be right back. All right, guys, I'm back. Thank you so much for bearing with me. And thank you for all those platforms that are allowing me to share. Sorry about that. Had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I'm back. So, welcome. I just left off with UGA. We're talking about college football today. And shout out to all the platforms that are allowing me to share. And welcome to August, and welcome to everyone that is tuning in now. So, let's look at Ole Miss, the Rebels. Pete Golding's re engineered attack. Pete Golding taking over the head coaching duties at Ole Miss. The Rebels are pairing defensively with the grit and explosive skill players that they have known to have. Well, their player spotlight centers around running back seasons and monster postseason moves and just things of that you just got to kind of look at. Of course, Kawan Lacey was a star name there, and the things that have happened in Ole Miss and what have you. So now SEC contenders roundup. Alabama, Kalen DeBoer enters year number 2 with a heavy emphasis on ground power, featuring backfield weapons like Jam Miller and Richard Young. They're going to be replacing their top tier secondary talent that was lost to the NFL. And that is going to be their biggest defensive hurdle because sometimes, face it, folks, these players are very hard to replace. And of course, you wish your players well as they graduate and go on to the league or whatever they're going to do post, college life. But sometimes they're leaving holes that are just simply unable to be filled. So, got to make sure you check in on all of that. What's up, J Train? Thank you so much, brother. How you doing today? J Train for Friday with the Fellas and BW Flicks and Sports Debate Show and Sunday Morning Sports Show and all that stuff. So now let's talk about Florida. Now keep an eye out for Vernell Brown III, a route technician who gives Florida an immediate spark on their third down. And you guys were shocked last year to see some of the stuff that fellow Floridians did in college world. So they're going to be looking to run the championship again that direction. And then when you look at Kentucky, veteran defensive back Ty Bryant, he's going to be anchoring the Wildcats secondary that will be tested weekly by SEC passing attacks. Got to definitely watch out for that. Now, let's be clear. Now, you can't talk about college football in 2026 without talking about what happens inside some of the off-season theatrics that involve courtrooms, unfortunately, just as much as what happens between the white lines on the field. This offseason has been filled with legal precedents that are completely changing how rosters are built. They're now, a end of the 7-year senior. You guys remember during the pandemic, everybody, we used to call it red shirted back in the day. They're not red shirting no more. They're just, getting extra time to basically play. So now it's a 5-5 rule. The NCAA officially has implemented the 5-5 eligibility model. Athletes are now going to have 5 calendar years to complete 5 seasons of competition. Traditional redshirt years, like I just talked to you guys about, and a general waiver extensions have been eliminated. And this is except for strict exceptions like military service or medical leave. But other than that, it won't be any more 30-year-olds playing in their last year in college. Okay. Hello, somebody, as they say, Carson Beck. Now, this is going to be a big impact on rosters because now coaches are forced to play younger guys earlier. Like, you got to go ahead and get that eligibility out there. Exactly. 5 years only makes sense. I mean, we start college, 18? That puts you at the most 23, maybe 22. You should not be past 24. I say at the most 25 playing in college sports. Now, you can no longer hoard a 5th or 6th year senior without consequences. Roster retention and high school development are suddenly going to be the top priorities again over this endless portal churn. Like, you guys know about the transfer portal. Whole bunch of stuff. Now, there's been some legal cases around this, believe it or not. You think, okay, sports is supposed to be just fun, not anything too serious. Well, the law actually shapes everything, even the fun stuff, folks. So there's also a revenue on sharing and NIL caps. Now, if you think about it, there was a case, Illy versus Minor versus the NCAA. The USC linebacker, I talked to you guys about that a couple of months ago on this actual segment. Tatiano Illy and Stanford quarterback Charlie Minor actually filed a class action suit challenging a $20.5 million per school NIL revenue sharing cap as illegal price fixing. Players are actually asserting their rights as economic drivers of the sports. They're saying, listen, stay out of our business. Don't worry about how we're getting our money. Just let us be. We are basically adults and you guys are too involved in our futures. So there you have it with that. Now, Tristan Smith also had a case. Clemson wide receiver Tristan Smith successfully secured a court injunction allowing him to actually compete after, and this is critical, the initial eligibility denials. Now, courts are consistently siding with athletes' mobility and playability over the rigid NCAA bylaws. And I guess you'll say, well, why come up with the laws if the courts are just going to overturn them? And I think because a lot of this is new, like 5 years from now, you won't see as many overturns. But right about now, you will, because this is still new, and a lot of courts are just not familiar with the NCAA regulations right now. Then you got gambling rules and restitution. Brendan Sorsby had a case. Texas Tech, Brendan Sorsby challenged the NCAA betting sanctions. He got some betting sanctions against him, and he obtained an injunction as well that cleared him to play while capping enforcement. So, yeah, ain't no fun when a rabbit's got the gun. That's exactly right. And Unfortunately, it's one of those things that the NCAA is got to basically, kind of take a back seat here, but you just don't know. It's like the kids are much smarter in regards to how to get their bag, like Jay Train said. So the takeaway for fans is rosters are fluid and eligibility decisions are being handed down by judges just as often as they are the NCAA committees. Now, let's talk about Coach Deion Sanders and Colorado's new era post Shador. Definitely a heartwarming moment, especially when both Shiloh and Shador left. Shiloh did try to get into the league, was actually signed on the practice squad as an undrafted free agent with Tampa Bay, but did not do anything with it. And in fact, just had a whole lot of other stuff going on. But Shador has relished in the NFL and has actually been named QB1 for Cleveland and broke a record being the only starting quarterback coming off the bench, basically starting to win a game in Browns history. So he's doing big things up there, and it's great to see him smile. In fact, he just invited Coach Prime to see some of his workouts. He said, Prime said last year he didn't get that text because, of course, Shador was not named starting quarterback, and that would be to the drama of Kevin Stefanski, who's since been moved to the Atlanta Falcons. And so now it's a new season, and as I always say, everybody's 0-0, and it's time to get this thing started. But let's think about back to Coach Prime. Now, love him or hate him, Deion Coach Prime is remaining one of the most compelling figures in American sports. You just gotta see that, and it's true. He's coming off of a tough 3-9 campaign, even though it was better than the previous season. Let's be clear, their offensive line and defense struggled throughout the stretch, but he did what he does best, and that's he gutted the house and completely remodeled. Now, with Shador being gone, they will be starting Julian Lewis. He is a 5-star prospect, excuse me, under center out there. He's going to bring exceptional poise and quick trigger decision making. He will be operating new offensive coordinator Brennan Marion's famous go-go offense. And this is an up-tempo system designed to create numbers, advantages in the run game, while still pushing the ball downfield quickly. So their biggest flaw overall, guys, was they had to rebuild in the trenches. I mean, the last 3 seasons, they had a flawed protection. Coach Prime actually brought in Georgia transfer tackle Bo Hughley, 6'7", 295 pounds, to anchor the entirety of that new starting unit. And the Buffaloes absolutely must establish an effective ground game, especially after bringing him in. And because last season, guys, they only averaged 3.5 yards per carry. So that's not much at all. Now, on their defensive side, almost the entire starting 11 features portal additions. Look out for Texas transfer linebacker Leona Lafaux, as well as Tennessee safeties transfer Boo Carter. They're going to provide the SEC level athleticism in the Big 12. Now, the question is, can Coach Prime's fast-paced, portal-heavy strategy deliver that bold berth and contend in the Big 12? It's a make-or-break time in Boulder for Coach Prime. Now, let's look at some of the pro pedigree, some former NFL stars that are now on college sidelines. One of the fascinating trends in college football is the surge of former NFL stars and NFL coaching minds taking over college programs, players who want coaches who have been where they are trying to go. In fact, just yesterday, DeAndre Hopkins, I don't want to say he's retiring. It says he's retiring, but he's leaving the door open to come back. He just got an offensive staff position yesterday with Georgia Tech. And so he is officially left the playing field to take the coaching field. Congratulations to D-Hop. And I just mentioned to you, Coach Prime, of course, with Colorado. Everybody knows who Prime is from the 90s all the way up. But Eddie George is coaching at Tennessee State. Former Heisman winner and Pro Bowl running back, continues building that physical pro style identity out at Tennessee State. Terrence Mathis is at Morehouse College. He's a former Pro Bowl Falcons wideout, holds franchise history records, now bringing strict pro fundamentals to the Morehouse men team. And Michael Vick, Norfolk State. We heard earlier this year, and Deshaun Jackson from Delaware State, big names, electric NFL playmakers, stepping into head coaching roles at HBCU programs, bringing modern, fast-paced offensive schemes. Now, Trent Diller, UAB, Super Bowl winning, quarterback running, pro style system designed to prep signal callers for the big league. They are definitely excited and blessed to have him out there. And if you look at programs like Ohio State, there's some pro coordinators that are there. Head coach Ryan Day actually brought in former NFL head coach Arthur Smith. So Arthur's officially has gone from the Falcons to the Steelers. Now he is on the college level with the head coach Ryan Day there. He is now their offense and former NFL defensive coordinator Matt Patricia. So who would have thought both of these guys? I mean, Ohio State should be like liquid flying next year, this season coming up, because those are two hitters that were at one point, high caliber, high sought after coaches. Now, this is the pro mentality that Day is implementing, and this is going to help produce a lot of good stuff. It helped produce 3 first-round defensive draft picks in this year's NFL draft, and they're expecting the momentum to continue because it's actually kept the Buckeyes at the top of the national title conversations. Now, if you think about overall the different teams of what you have to go through during the offseason, the conditioning. We've heard of NFL players that are injured in the first few days of practice. It kind of makes you think about another team, none other than Lane Kiffin over in LSU, the Tigers. This is the beginning of his era. He's taken over in Baton Rouge after Brian Kelly's departure, bringing a high-tempo, modern offense vision to Death Valley. Now, Kiffin executed the most aggressive single offensive roster turnover in program history, y'all, bringing in over 40 transfer portal additions. And this was actually ranked the number 1 portal class in the nation. But I guess with 40 people, 40 players, you would say, and this is supposed to immediately reshape the depth chart out in Louisiana. Sam Leavitt, the Arizona State transfer, is going to be stepping in as QB1. Now, during his time in Tempe, Leavitt led the Sun Devils to an 11-3 record, guys, and a CFP berth in 2024. He threw for over 2,885 yards and 24 touchdowns with just 6 picks while adding over 400 rushing yards. Yes, LSU is absolutely going to shock the world, and I absolutely believe that. He said, you heard it here first. J Train is a New Orleans big LSU fan, rightly so, because he's from out there where they have the best seafood ever. Crescent City. I think you guys call it Crescent City. But anyway, you heard it here first, and he's actually right. They are going to be definitely a huge contender, especially with that many new players coming in. Now, Leavitt also had 24 touchdowns, only 6 picks, guys, and 400 rushing yards. This guy is an absolute beast. And you got to think about it. Lane is that dude, right? Love him or hate him. He came in and he shook things up, and that's what we're going to look at. Now, you got to think about it. Let's look at the little flip side. Unfortunately, Leavitt actually had Liz Frank foot surgery, so he's coming off of that off-season surgery, but he's reportedly at full strength heading into this camp. He's a dual threat. He's an improvisationalist. He has skill on third downs, and he makes a lot of handpicked decisions that Kiffin has across the spread a perfect match. So it's a perfect match. So Kiffin knew what he was doing when he brought him in. Now, behind Leavitt sits former 5-star USC transfer Musan Longstreet, and then Elon, North Carolina transfer Landon Clark, and Middle Tennessee State transfer Caden Martin. Sorry, guys. Hold on one second. All right. So, excuse me about that, guys. Had a little cough there. That's a lot of quarterbacks in one room. That lets me know that Kiffin has stacked it up that nobody is going to take them out. They've got buku on buku on buku of people waiting to take over. Now, key offensive players to watch in LSU: left tackle Jordan Seaton, former Colorado star. Yes, Prime lost him. Number one portal tackle in the conference, transferred in to lock down the blind side for Levet. Tight end, Tradez Green, standing at 6'7". Green caught 33 passes for 433 yards and 7 touchdowns last season, and is set to be a premier red zone mismatch in the SEC. Now, don't forget about wide receiver Jace Brown. Kansas State transfer brings explosive deep threat capability after racking up 1535 receiving yards over his past 2 seasons. And then they have a backfield punch, guys. Like J Train said, LSU is about to shock the entire world. They are returning dynamic back Caden Durham. He's going to be paired up with 5-star freshman sensation Harlem Berry to form one of the SEC's highest upside running back dual tandems you have ever heard of. Now, their edge rusher, do not get it twisted. Prince Will Umanimilian, the Ole Miss transfer, 9 sacks last season by himself. He's going to be the anchor, and he's going to have that edge rush lockdown alongside a retooled defensive line. Then linebacker, their core is solid, guys. Senior Whit Weeks returns alongside Ole Miss transfer TJ Daughtery. This is going to be commanding in the middle and a presence that anybody on the other side of the grid line does not want to see. Their secondary is even strong as they've brought in 5-star cornerback DJ Pickett. He's going to lead a young, fast secondary that will be tested by some of the SEC's top passing attacks. So, the main storyline: Lane Kiffin, brand new in his era. Got to look at the chemistry. It's a lot of different pieces, different players that have come in. LSU enters 2026 with elite individual talent. Each of those 40 players, like I told you guys, ranked number 1 in transfers in the portal class. They graded them. This dude snatched up a whole team almost. 40 is a lot. 40 is a whole lot. 40 newcomers learning new offensive and defensive schemes simultaneously. It's going to look at how fast this unit is going to glue, they're going to mesh, and how they're going to gel in the fall camps that are coming up. This is going to determine if they are able to actually contend for the SEC title and a 12-team playoff berth right away. And I believe they have the tools to do so. Let's take a small break. I'll be right back with the next team. Here we go. All right, welcome back to the second half of our show, y'all. I'm so sorry. Like the credits or something were renamed, and I was having problems finding them. But anyway, welcome to the second half of the show. Still talking about college football previews. Let's talk about my team. I was going to wait for last. We're going to go ahead and move in. And I talked a little bit about Kirby Smart earlier in the Georgia Bulldogs 11th season with the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart continuing to run the SEC standard, blending heavy pro style sets with high ceiling defensive rotations. Quarterback Gunnar Stockton is going to return as a second-year starter. Stockton led the SEC in deep ball completions, efficiency on passes over 15 yards, 69.7%, and now holds the keys to the full playbook. So, big thing. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen a lot of success with the quarterback role there in Georgia, but we're definitely happy for it. Gunnar Stockton looks like he may be finally acclimating. Key playmakers, Georgia Tech transfer wide receiver Isaiah Canyon is going to be stepping in a little bit across the city, now going up to the Athens area in as QB1's primary target to replace lost NFL draft production five-star DL Elijah Griffin. He's going to be anchoring the interior defensive line. Now, in the trenches and the defenses, typical Georgia depth is going to be up front. Defense relies heavily on line rotation, and this is going to be to keep these pass rushers fresh in fourth quarters because, we've seen Georgia kind of have to fight back on some of these last possessions, and it gets really eerie, especially when you see a team that for the most part has had the lead and the lead, and then all of a sudden here we are in the last few minutes. Oh, now we don't have the lead anymore, and they kind of seem to run out of gas. So got to look at it from that standpoint. After back-to-back SEC title game appearances without a national crown, Kirby's squad is going to be focused on finishing the job this season in an expanded playoff. Now let's talk about we've already talked about the effect Arch Manning is going to have on everybody because you got to keep an eye on him. He's one of those other elite quarterbacks, as I told you guys a little bit earlier on. The Alabama Crimson Tide coaching and their system is behind Kalen DeBoer. He's entering year number 3, continuing to transition the Tide into an explosive vertical spread offense. Their quarterback, guys, fall quarterback saw a duel between redshirt sophomore Austin Mack and five-star freshman Keelan Russell. So they're still trying to decide who's going to be QB1. Now, key playmakers that have shown themselves during this time, during the fall camps, are running back Jam Miller and Richard Young. They both led a physical backfield designed to keep pressure off the young signal callers. And then if you look about some of their trenches, the Tide front seven remains stacked, but replacing some of their elite draft bound talent in the secondary is definitely going to be a primary defensive project for the Crimson Tide. The main storyline for them is going to be proving DeBoer can maintain Alabama's championship standard with his handpicked quarterback leading the charge, because you guys know it's been a long time since we've seen the likes of any of these powerhouses, UGA, Alabama, all of those guys. We just did not see them. It was like a different. It was almost like a out of land experience, like out of this world experience. Ole Miss Rebels. Let's not forget about them. Pete Golding elevated to head coach following Lane Kiffin's departure to LSU. So Lane really didn't move that far away. I mean, these areas are geographically close. But Golden is going to retain the up-tempo offensive framework that was already in place by Kiffin. And why would you not? He's clearly a success, while installing a more aggressive defensive structure. Their quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. You guys keep an eye and an ear out for that name because it's going to mean something even as the years progress. I know he's going to go into the league one of these days really soon. But anyway, he's returning for another season after leading the Rebels on an explosive college football playoff run. Just an amazing young man. Key playmakers for Ole Miss, the Rebels, of course, star running back Kewan Lacey anchors the ground game alongside that retooled wide receiver corps. And then the trenches and the defense. Golding's defense returns key linebackers, utilizing aggressive front blitz packages to disrupt standard drop back passing. So they are doing what they need to do best and making sure everybody knows we are coming. Y'all know that's like my favorite saying, we coming. The main headline for them is maintaining their playoff caliber performance in Oxford during the post Kiffin era and transition, especially with Trinidad Chambliss leading the pack. The Texas A&M Aggies. Now, we already went out there a little bit earlier, told you about Sarkisian. Now, let's look at Coach Mike Echo. Brings a defensive first mentality paired with balanced pro-style offensive scheme. Their quarterback, Marcel Reed, returns as a dual threat engine of the offense, generating high expectations after strong performances in big-time SEC contests. Key playmakers are their physical backfield unit. Those guys were dominant, and they actually upgraded their secondary feature heavily in some of Echo's game plans. Now, his specialty, one of the deepest defensive line rotations in the country, is built to shut down opposing ground attacks. So they are heavily weaponed on the grounds. Now, the big thing for them is going to be converting their roster talent into a legitimate SEC West run and return trip to the college football playoff. Let's look at the Oklahoma Sooners. Brent Venables continues leading the Sooners, taking back full defensive play calling duties to restore elite standards in Norman. John Mateer, their quarterback, is leading the offense, giving Oklahoma a tough dual threat leader behind center. And there is a high ceiling portal, guys, with wideouts out in Oklahoma right now. This is like a refurbished tight end room with more vertical depth. Like it's just going to be an improved vertical depth for the Sooners, I guess sooner than later, right? But Venables' front seven actually was ranked among the SEC's top units last fall, and they are going to continue returning with a lot of their veterans in interior tackle positions. So look for them to still be making noise out in Oklahoma. Now, they're going to have to make sure that they balance a stout defense with consistent offensive rhythms that they've already put in place to cement their status in the SEC for the upper tier runs. Now, let's talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. John Hupy's fast-paced, space, and pace offense continues to stress SEC secondaries. Yes, I said it. Fall competition between top-tier young arms George McIntyre and Faison Brandon. They are trying to see who's going to be their QB1. This is alongside the transfer depth, so they're still sorting it out. But their key playmakers, electric perimeter wideout, step into the starting positions to maintain Hupel's signature vertical passing attack. And if I'm mispronouncing Josh's last name, I'll just call him Josh to make sure. So my apologies. But their defensive line coach, Rodney Garner, brings back a deep rotational unit up front to pressure the pocket pass, and that's really good for Tennessee. And then they're going to have to make sure that navigating a transition at quarterback without sacrificing offensive tempo or scoring the output. Keep an eye out for the Tennessee Volunteers because they're not volunteering any wins to anybody. They're just trying to stay consistent. Let me make sure I got any comments over here. Okay. All right. The Missouri Tigers, guys. Eli Drinkwitz, now the second longest tenured coach in the SEC, continues running a modern pro speed system. Quarterback Austin Simmons steps into the starting job, bringing high arm talent to the Tigers offense. Now, the key playmakers for Missouri, guys, is reliable slot receivers, backfield committees that are keeping Missouri balanced on the early downs. You guys probably saw that like last season. You would be like, wait a minute. These are early downs. They're staying where they need to be. They're staying on their feet and they're moving the ball. But a discipline-heavy defensive line that prioritizes gap control and forces long third down conversions is going to be where they need to continue to strengthen. They were good like that last season. They need to move on and continue to build on that and keep that momentum going. They are a 9 and 10 win team for the most part. They're going to have to try to really keep up to definitely maintain that momentum and be increasingly competitive in a 16 team SEC. Now, going back to Alabama, the Auburn Tigers. Alex Golesh is going to be taking over on the Plains, bringing a high tempo. A lot of these teams are focusing on high tempo. Like nobody's these non-countdowns, everything, because these teams are fast. And I told you guys earlier on, if you're not going to get beyond a 5-year time of eligibility, the players are younger and younger. So the speed is going to be faster and faster. These guys are coming straight out of high school and they're ready to get on it just like that. So Byram Brown, who followed Golesh from South Florida, is going to be bringing his 3,000-yard passing and 1,000-yard rushing history to Auburn. And this is huge. You don't want to just glaze over those stats and think, okay, he's following Alex and okay, they make a great duo. No, this dude is bringing solid numbers to the Tigers, and that may very well make the Tigers a relevant team again. They have dynamic perimeter playmakers, excuse me, and they have specifically chosen to operate inside of Galesh's ultra fast offensive cadence. Now, I just told you guys fast. This is ultra fast. Like it's going to be speed, zilch, everything, just no time for anything else. They restructured their front seven to support a fast-moving, high-snap offense. So if they restructured it, that lets me know, okay, you brought in Byron Brown and 6 other dudes at least to make sure that nobody sees you coming. They're going to be reestablishing this offensive identity quickly in this first year, and that's what everybody's predicting. Big changes in Alabama under Coach Josh here. Florida Gators. John Summerall. Now, he's going to assume that a lot of new head coaches, y'all, assume head coaching duties, bringing a tough physical program culture back to Gainesville. Georgia Tech transfer Aaron Philo goes from the Atlanta area down to Gainesville, Florida. He's going to be still vying for that QB1 position. It has not solidified yet because spring standout Tramel Jones Jr. has been showing huge promise. And it is a tight race to see who will be the last QB1 that is chosen before kickoff time. Now, wide receiver Micah Mays Jr. leads a refreshed receiver room. And this is under offensive leadership, new offensive leadership. Everything is fresh down there. Summerall's priority was building the line depth to physical SEC standards after an offseason attrition. So, you got to think about it. If everybody's talking about how fast everything is going to be, you can't come in there playing average football anymore. Launching a new era under Summerall with a rebuilt core and an immediate defensive grip because, you know, your defense is what's going to slow all that other stuff down, all the hoopla, all the fast pace. South Carolina Gamecocks. Shane Beamer is going to be installing his new offensive coordinator, Kendall Browse, to inject fast-paced options and dynamics into their attack run. Quarterback Lenoris Sellers returns under center. So he's going to have to pick it up. His dual threat physical tools make him an ideal centerpiece for Brow's system. They have physical target options on the outside and a downhill run game that's going to ease a lot of the pressure that we've seen on Sellers in the previous season. Now, their edge rushers are going to be paramount here because they're going to anchor that defense that relies heavily on creating turnovers. So one thing about it, these other teams that want to be fast, sometimes you could be too fast and you make mistakes. And that's what South Carolina is focusing on going into this new season. They're going to be trying to unlock Sellers' maximum ceiling under Browse to make noise in the SEC standings. Kentucky Wildcats. Their coach, Mark Stoops, continues a tough run-first, physical defense later model in Lexington. Transfer portal additions there. They led a lot of retooling. The pass attack was refurbished, refreshed, focused on high-efficiency play action. And physical tailbacks and reliable possessions. Receivers, their receiver room has been designated to win physical battles against the SEC DB. So, you got to be able to, like I said, stop the run. The defense is where it's at. If you don't want them to score, defense has to step up and score. Defense wins championships, and that is so true. So they are focusing more on like, okay, we see all these other teams out here who are saying run, 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 fast, 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 no clock, no clock, because we are like, a speeding bullet. And they're like, nope, we are going to stand in the gap in the physical battle of all things, and we are going to try to force some of these turnovers against some of these big powerhouses in the SEC's offense. Now, defensive back Ty Bryant actually is going to be anchoring the secondary that remains the foundation of Stoops' defensive structure. Overcoming a grueling SEC schedule, y'all, by controlling the clock and physically wearing down the opponents is how we're going to have a chance to see the Wildcats make a difference. The Arkansas Razorbacks. Ryan Silverfield talks over as, taking it in and bringing it up and what he's going to do in Arkansas now that he's head coach. Bringing discipline, pro-style offensive framework to Fayetteville. KJ Jackson competing with Memphis transfer AJ Hill, another QB1 debate, shakedown, whatever you want to call it, to see who's going to solidify that top space. Power running backs are right up behind them on the offensive line, and it's built around a downhill gap scheme. This is the second team that I've said to you guys focuses on a downhill gap scheme. Defensive front is going to be focusing on plunging interior run lanes to force long passing down. So again, another team that's like, okay, we see everybody offensively. Let's ramp up our defense, because everybody else, except for Kentucky that I just spoke to you guys about, is focusing on no tempo, no huddle, just everything. But if you force a long pass down, you have a higher probability of an interception. So they are focusing on their defensive front. They're going to also be looking at finding stability at quarterback once they decide who that is. And they're going to look for Silverfield to actually come out as a conference caller. We're going to definitely make sure that comes about. The Mississippi State Bulldogs. Jeff Levy's wide split, high velocity spread offense enters its second phase. Camario Taylor is leading right now as their quarterback. He's the breakout candidate down there for the offense. He's been bringing a lot of high mobility, a lot of physicality, and a lot of vertical arm strength. So he's projected to be named their QB1 any day now. Deep perimeter threats are another thing that they have. Quick cut slot receivers designated to stretch secondaries horizontally. And another team focusing on defense, an aggressive blitz-heavy defense designated to force quick decisions from opposing quarterbacks. So if you're doing fast tempo already and you're not even having a chance to lock eyes in with your receiver, high probability of interception again. And if you got a blitz-heavy defense, get ready to cough up the ball multiple times. Camario Taylor's breakout potential, you got to keep an eye on that to see if it's really going to be enough to elevate Mississippi State into a spoiler role in the SEC. So no one's projecting them to go all the way to the top, but they could be this team that makes it advantageous to just stay just below the surface. And when these big teams start to make it, when they got to win their games, they're like, okay, we're on upset alert. We're going to make sure this team is not in the SEC. The Vanderbilt Commodores is the last team I'm covering for the SEC. Talking about Vanderbilt, coaching system, Clark Lee leads the Commodores with a disciplined ball control approach. Now, a lot of you guys may not follow the Vanderbilt Commodores a lot, but they have a highly touted 5-star freshman, Jared Curtis. He is ready to take over the offense following Diego Pavia's departure. You guys know who he is, right? Their key playmakers are versatile backfield options that they've implemented, and tight ends. We haven't talked about tight ends a lot, but they're going to be using a lot of their tight ends extensively in short yardage and play action concepts. So this is a team that's focusing on everybody on the everybody on the offense right there. Now they're going to be touching their defense a little bit, seeing experienced linebacking because they already seem like they have that sewn up, and core designed to limit explosive plays over the top. So another team is now joining the segment saying, you know what? We're not worried about playing fast football. We're worried about playing mistake-free football and capitalizing on the mistakes of those teams that want to play fast-paced football. So handing the offense to the freshman sensation, Jared Curtis, while replacing the signature leadership of Diego Pavia is going to be key when looking at the Vanderbilt Commodores. So I know I focus a lot on the SEC. That's generally what a lot of people pay attention to. And so, but last year, just as a little revisionist history, it was just a shocker. It was a shocker because the teams that were actually there, and y'all know, all you got to do is lose a couple of games, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you're out of contentions. So it was almost like a home game for the Florida teams because it was in Miami Gardens. The Hoosiers, Indiana Hoosiers, against the Miami Hurricanes, the Canes. And so it was a historic undefeated season for Coach I'm having a tongue twister here. Coach Kirk Signetti. I guess why? Because it's all C's. But anyway, he led the Hoosiers, guys, to a perfect 16-0 record. Every time I hear that, I have like a flashback of my Panthers. I'm so sorry, but I just can't. I remember our season. I just cannot ever undo that. But anyway, he secured the first national championship in their program history. So don't think they're going to go away. How about that? Their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, managed the game efficiently. Of course, Fernando is now no longer their QB. They had a lot of big plays, 12-team playoff bracket recap, basically lower seeded. This is the thing. The first round highlights were lower seeded Miami and Ole Miss made deep runs out of the opening round with Miami upsetting higher seeds on their road. It was just literally a Cinderella moment because if you think about it, Indiana was top ranked, right? But even in all the brackets and everything, nobody had them winning at all. They were so fixated on the SEC and the fact that a team that won had to come out of the SEC that it was crazy to think of anybody else having anything to basically bring to the table, like other than their appetite. I do want to wrap up with the Ohio State, though, the Buckeyes, because they are looking at, like I said earlier, they got Matt Patricia over there and Arthur Smith. So they're looking at a role that, okay, we are only talking about pro type of talent here. But their quarterback spotlight, Julian Saying, he is a sophomore now. He's a redshirt still, but he is actually coming out as one of the premier Heisman candidates. Now, this is going to be his first season as a starter. He started last season as a starter, and 77% of his passes ranking first in the entire country, and stomped out one of the most efficient single season passing performances in FBS history. So you got to keep an eye on all of those guys. You got to look and see what they have. Key offensive players to watch. Of course, wide receiver Jeremiah Smith, unanimous All-American, returns for his junior year, already on the verge of history. He's entering the season with just 43 receptions, 341 receiving yards, and 9 touchdowns, away from breaking Ohio State's all-time program records in all 3 categories. Their wide receiver, Brandon Ennis with Carnell Tate, drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, former 5-star recruit. Ennis steps up as a primary option alongside Smith as well. And then their wide receiver, freshman Chris Henry Jr., 5-star true freshman. You hardly see that these days. Wideout airs, rare 6'5" in height, and immediate vertical threat capability to zone 6. Ohio State's going to bring back 4 starting offensive linemen: Austin Silverell, Luke Montgomery, Carson Hinsman, and Phillip Daniels, giving the Buckeyes one of the most experienced and explosive fronts in the nation. Now, they had to replace some of their first-round draft picks after losing 8 starters to the NFL draft, including first-rounders Caleb Downs, Arvell Reese, and Sonny Styles. Matt Patricia is going to be relying on immediately retooling through top recruits and portal additions. Now, their edge rusher, Kenyatta Jackson Jr., is going to return to command the pass rush after finishing second on the team in sacks and tackles for loss. And then you got to look at the leadership. Senior cornerback Jermaine Matthews Jr. Leads the perimeter coverage, paired with Florida State transfer safety Earl Little Jr. and junior safety Jalen McClain to lock down the back end. Their defensive tackles, James Smith and John Walker, are going to step into heavy national and rotational snaps to stuff interior SEC Big Ten ground attacks. The main storyline out of Ohio is, even with 11 players drafted into the NFL and major portal turnovers, Ohio State's standard does not drop. It stays the same. And with Heisman caliber stars in Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith, 4 returning starter O-linemen, and 2 former NFL head coaches coordinating the schemes, the Buckeyes enter 2026 as a top-tier front runner and favorite to win the Big Ten and conquer the 12-team college football playoff. I had to end, guys, with that because that's one of the big teams that we always talk about. All right, guys, that's all the time I have for now. It's been absolutely amazing. Thanks, J Train, for joining in, supporting, saying hello, and the comments, likes, loves, and shared by everyone who was behind the scenes and those platforms that allowed me to share. Make sure you join us here at 5 o'clock. Just a couple more minutes. Got another show coming up here. And then shows throughout the night and in the morning at 8 a.m. is the Sunday morning almost football show. It's going to be here before you know it. But I appreciate everybody. Have a great Saturday. Enjoy your month and blessings.